I know we've talked about like should the Pistons, re-sign certain players. Now, this is a compiled list of the Detroit Pistons free agents. Mine is Donis Jenkins because I don't really know what the Pistons two ways are going to be on their outlook with that because two ways change every year.
Right.
But these are all five of the Detroit Pistons free agents. So we have Tim Hardaway Jr., Dennis Schroeder, Malik Beasley, Lindy Waters, Paul Reed. Do you want to kind of maybe just go down each individual one and kind of give your perspective on each player?
Yeah. I think these are all very interesting names. They all made a very intriguing impact in some way, shape, or form for this team. I mean, even Lindy Waters hitting that, last second shot to go to overtime against the Bucks before the regular season was over was pretty cool. But yeah, looking at these names, they're gonna they're gonna have to make some tough decisions regarding these five names. If I could just, and these are all guesses, I'm not reporting anything. This is just, what I think can shake up and happen. I think it may be a little too repetitive to bring back Tim Hardaway and Malik Beasley. Um, I think Beasley, even though his postseason ended in kind of unfortunate fashion, I think he's done enough to kind of show how important he is to this rotation. He's shown that he can play off the bench, in the starting lineup and, be that reliable shooting source that Cade and, this team is needed in terms of spacing and shot creation for such a long time. I've loved what I saw from Beasley this season. I think he's their top priority. And I do have a feeling that he comes back. I have a feeling that maybe Schroeder comes back as well because I just don't know how ready um Mark, that's name slipped me for a second. Marcus Sasser. I don't know how ready he is to, step in and be that next guy as their backup point because he showed that his value is being a scorer, not necessarily the guy that sets up others. And Schroeder has at least been able to do that. Um, I'm not sure where Tim Hardaway goes at this point. He's a little older in his career. He did a lot for the team. He was definitely a great locker room plug. Did a lot of great things for this team in terms of their preparation for the postseason. But his streakiness is a little too noted for me, and I think that may be the reason that he might be the odd man out or one of the odd men out. Lindy, I think probably we've seen the end of him in Detroit. Paul Reed, I think is interesting. I think he's another one of those great, locker room, players that they have that has brought a lot of great energy and showed a lot of guys like Beef Stew and Duran, how to scrap for, extra possessions and how to fight and, be that, energy glue guy. Like, they have the dog pound. I don't think they ever really initiated him, but I think Paul Reed was kind of like a dog pound player for how they play. He was really good in the postseason when they needed him in short spots, regular season as well. I wouldn't be surprised they find a way to bring him back on a vet minimum. But yeah, I would say to me, if I were to take a guess, I think those would be the three that they bring back. What the numbers and figures would be, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's going to be a tough conversation and decision for a Trajan to make this offseason.
Yeah, when I was looking at like who our free agents were, because obviously off the top of my head, sometimes I forget about Lindy and I forget about Paul Reed and even Dennis Schroeder to an extent. But I think you're right though with Tim Hardaway Jr. I mean, if you look at the cap hit that he has, a cap hold, it's 24 million. So the Pistons, I think in free agency, but they probably have a good indication of what the ballpark figure that they would want to bring back a Tim Hardaway Jr. if they did want to kind of run it back that way with him. But I think at the end of the day, Jaden Ivey only played 30 games, and I'm one to think that once Asar came back, maybe Tim would have kind of gotten out of the rotation a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because I just saw a tweet the other day from Kuka Hill that Jaden Ivey only played 2 minutes with the Sar, Cade, Jalen Duren, and Tobias.
Insane.
It kind of shows you like we were kind of robbed though, like
Yeah.
because Ivy was playing some of the best ball of his career
Yep.
under JB in his first year, but I do agree with you. I think it's kind of redundant because you are getting Jaden Ivey back. He should be 100% healthy by training camp, and saw him wear a practice jersey. First time I've seen him wear a practice jersey, last week. So obviously the rehab is going well, but um, if I'm being honest, I would be okay with letting Tim just kind of explore free agency. And if there's not a market for him, if you can get him on a friendly deal, I guess kind of, do it that way. Malik, I'm with you. And I think Malik is priority number one for not only Pistons fans, but I feel like this front office.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where this front office can kind of do like, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of gymnastics in a sense, where I would give Malik a mid-level exception. I would give him the 3-year mid-level. That way you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to use your cap space. And I think it's enough for him to be happy with, because if you kind of look at the biggest contracts he's ever had, it was Minnesota. Like that was the
Mm-hmm.
biggest contract he ever had. And I think a mid-level is a little bit lower than what he was in Minnesota, but at the end of the day, I feel like he likes it here. He likes playing with Cade. He likes being home. And I think that matters. And he was just such a positive voice in the locker room. And I know he gave a lot of reporters the time that you guys asked for him. And like, obviously the 3-point shooting, I think, is just so appealing to keep him on this roster. And he's not even 30 yet, by the way. So if you give him a 3-year deal, like he'll still be like what, 31, 32 by the time the contract's over. Maybe you
Right.
give him another 3-year deal when you have a little bit more cap space to spend. So Malik would be for me number one. Dennis Schroeder, I want to bring him back. I really do. I think where the Pistons have a leg up is they have his early bird rights, which I think
Okay.
will help with negotiations. Um, and it makes me wonder. I know I touched on Ivy. Like Dennis Schroeder wouldn't really have to play, 30, 35 minutes a game because you have a health of Jaden Ivey, and you can kind of let Dennis Schroeder just run the second unit with Malik, with Stu, with Bobby Klitman. Kind
Mm-hmm.
of putting it out there. Love you, Tech, but man, season was rough. Season was rough. Hope you're doing well. But I would love to bring back a Dennis Schroeder. Lindy, I just didn't see enough. Even though that Bucks game, that was a crazy game, by the way. Pat Connaughton legacy game. Good lord.
Kyle Kuzma 40 or whatever, but he got out the.
Yeah, he scored 40, then he forgot how to play basketball in the playoffs. Like I don't even know what happened there, man. It was wild. Lindy, I think if you just want like a cheap option because he's a small forward, maybe if you're just trying to fill out the roster, maybe. But I think we could probably both agree most likely he's not going to be on this roster. I think he was just kind of a throw-in piece for Dennis Schroeder at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And then Paul Reed, I think what he did, I think some people kind of undersell, not being only like not playing each and every game, but he was positive. He was a third string center. Like in the playoffs, I thought he did a good job as he could have. Trying to go up against Mitchell Robinson, who's 7 feet, and Paul Reed is like 6'8". So I mean, I don't know. Maybe you try to look to upgrade that third string center. Maybe you try to get, I don't know, an Andre Drummond, get a little bit more size there as a third string center on a vet's minimum. I don't know. But if I had to just pick two guys out of this list, it's probably Malik and Schroeder.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at this point. Schroeder did a really good job. Like you can maybe make the argument that he was in stretches their second best player based on how he was playing on both sides of the ball. Did a really good job of defending, Brunson, and was really helpful as their secondary ball handler and primary in certain instances. But that's, I mean, kind of what we talk about with Cade as well. You need, like, there's a world where you can see them both, have Schroeder on the floor and then having Ivy next to him as well. And that kind of like dynamic gets a little bit easier for the two of them because there were a lot of stretches where Schroeder had to just create everything. And that's not really what you want your backup guard to be. You want to be able to have, I think you need to have like two creators on the floor at all times. And it seemed like the Pistons were kind of shrunk down to having one. Tobias, I thought, had a pretty good series, but a lot of it was created off of his catch and shoot opportunities or maybe just posting up on the block against smaller, matchups. And I think you need just maybe one more guy to kind of go along with that dynamic. And I think having a Cade, a healthy Ivy, Schroeder off the floor or off the bench, and then maybe one more guy to kind of, bring a little bit of a more scary dynamic offensively, I think puts them in a different kind of tier. And, it doesn't have to be so much where they're leaning on just one person to create for four other guys, because that can get sloppy, especially when you're playing against a team like the Knicks, who had creators and guys who were just making miracle shot after miracle shot. Like, how many OG Anunoby shots where he's off balance with a guy in his face, he knocks it down. Mikal Bridges, same thing. Cat, 3, 4, 5 steps behind the 3-point line, sinks it with ease. Like, they were just hitting some unbelievable shots, and the Pistons need a little bit more firepower to be able to match with teams like that, especially heading into the postseason.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. I think free agency is definitely going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you could kind of tell though, like going into like last summer, the Pistons were shocked that they got Malik Beasley for what they got him at, and
For
like
sure.
Malik saying like, "Don't trade me, I want to be here." I think it just kind of speaks volume of like his character and like what he wants to do in Detroit. I mean, he said he wanted to bring the playoffs back. He did that. I know on that stream earlier this year, said he wanted to bring a Larry O'Brien back to Detroit, and like
Mm-hmm.
obviously he kind of struggled in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, I think going from 14 to 44 is crazy, and I think a lot of these bets are a big reason why they were able to, be a playoff team. Obviously, K took that huge step, but like I don't think they get to where they're at without a lot of these veterans on this list.
100%. And to even get as far as they did is a complete shock. I mean, these guys, like you said, even the impact of a guy like Paul Reed, who, again, may not be remembered by a lot of the outside noise, but I think, like, the Pistons fan base, there's always those, like, role players that are just remembered forever, like the Job Berries, the Ish Smiths. I think Paul Reed has done enough to kind of, cement himself, even going back to the Utah game where he scores and he's shoving, what's his name? The six man, I forgot his name off their bench. He just played with a different kind of fight for this team and showed them basically what it means to be, like kind of embody that Detroit Pistons basketball in the front court, and kind of giving that extra effort. It's not just all about scoring, because Paul was good at scoring, but he was able to pull down rebounds, switch around defensively, fight for loose balls. He did a lot of great things for this team. And I think, based on what they need at this point, I actually love the Andre Drummond name. That's actually a really good idea. Um, Needing that size, knowing that he's interested in finishing his career in Detroit, as he said before, I think it just kind of makes, all the sense in the world. It'll hopefully get y'all to stop booing him when he shows up to LCA. It makes a lot of sense based on what they need. If that's the upgrade over Paul, then I think it makes all the sense in the world, especially off the glass too, where they needed a lot of assistance, fighting on, against the offensive opportunities from the Knicks or whoever else. So yeah, they have a lot of opportunity to shaping up that bench, and I think there's some good names to fill in to do it.